Let's understand how animation layers work. This is scene 02 in your project files directory. If I were to hit play, we should see a running animation. Alright, so animation layers, what are they and why would we want to use them? Animation layers allows us to add offsets to our pre-existing animation without having to interfere with our original keyframes. So we're going to be able to add these offsets per layer. And what's nice is that this is all non-destructive, meaning that we can add anything from subtleties to these layers or even extreme movement. And if we were to delete them, it would not interfere at all or mess up in any way our original animation. So let's go ahead and learn exactly how this works. If we were to go to our channel box, notice we have a new section here, Anim. If we were to click on that, that's how we access our animation layer editor. Now if you'd like, you can see a floating window and work with that instead. You can go to the Show menu, the layer editor, and choose floating window. Then you can go ahead and expand this however you'd like. Alright, but for now I'm going to go ahead and close this out. So here we have the layer editor. Let's also go ahead and show our control curves for this character. I've just went to the Show menu and chose NURBS curves. Alright, now if we were to select the character's head control, you'll see that yes, we do have animation on this object already and it is cycled. And what we're going to go ahead and do is see exactly what's going to happen as we add in a new layer. What happens to these keyframes. So with the object selected, we'll go to the last button in the animation layer editor toolbar, okay, all the way to the right, and we'll click it. Okay. Now this object has now been added to our animation layer, and you also see something else that looks like a layer, but in actuality, this is just our original animation. You can see also how our attribute color changes as we add objects to a layer. Okay, so they turn yellow, the same color as if we were to add objects to a character set. Now, we also, looking back at our editor, see a few color-coded circles here. The green circle lets us know that a layer is active or ready to receive keyframes. The red dot, this tells us that a layer is affected, meaning that it shares the same attributes as another layer. There's also what is called a current layer, which is pretty much just a selected layer. So as we select the animation layer at the top, that is a current or selected layer. Pretty self-explanatory. Now, if you'd like, you can rename your layer. So if we were to double click, we can call this head turn, just to stay organized. Okay? And also, you can select your layers from the layer dropdown, which is right next to our character set dropdown underneath our animation controls. So if we were to click on this green arrow here, notice we can get to our base level and animate on this. Notice we see our keyframes, but as we switch over to our head turns, notice we're working with a clean slate to add those animation offsets. Let's start working on adding a head turn to this animation. So I'll go to about frame 100, and what we'll first want to do is take this current pose, and we can do that by setting a 0 key, which essentially copies the pose from our original animation and pastes that to our new layer. Okay, so with the layer selected, head turn, I'm going to go ahead and choose 0 key on frame 100. Alright, so now that we have that locked down, let's go to about frame 110, and we'll have character look at us. So we'll rotate the head. Okay, and we'll press Shift E to lock in rotate keys. So watch what's going to happen. I'm going to go ahead and hide these curves, and I'll restart the animation. So the character is running, and notice now he's going to turn his head, and not only do we have this head turn, but if you look closely, we also still are able to keep the results of our original animation, meaning the head bops and slight head turns. So that is just a simple example of the power of working with animation layers. And as we continue further on in the training, we'll really see how much of a benefit it can be to our animation workflow. So let's go ahead and finish off this animation here. With the head selected, I'm going to go ahead and go to about frame, let's say 150, and press Shift E to lock in this pose. And then at about 160, we'll have him turn his head back. So we'll go ahead and choose 0 key. Now, if we were to play the animation once again, okay, again he's looking forward, then he sees us, and then looks back. And notice how quickly we were able to do this. Great. So before we actually close this lesson off and start talking about the layer editor toolbar, I did want to show you just a few more things. You can adjust the display of your animation layer editor if you'd like, and this will probably be best shown by working with the floating window. So let's say if we wanted to have our buttons on the right instead. Well, what we could do is go to Option and choose Buttons on Right. And notice how that kind of flips our layer pane. Okay, so all of these buttons which allow us to mute and solo layers, we're going to be discussing these a little bit later on, but now they have been switched over to the right side. So if you find that to work better for you, here is the option to do that. But I like the default setting, so I'm going to go ahead and bring that back. Also, if you'd like, you can have the base animation lie on top of your newly created layers. Now, something very important to keep in mind about this is as we add layers, they're always going to be on top of one another, always on top of the base animation. No matter if we were to go to Option and choose Reverse Layer Stack, okay, notice it does look like the base animation is lying on top and is going to change how our animation is calculated, but that is not the case. This is just a display thing. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and bring this back to the default because I find that a little bit more clear to read. Alright, now with all of these things said and done, I'm going to go ahead and stop the lesson here, and in the next lesson we'll get right into understanding the animation layer editor toolbar.